Welcome to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast, brought to you by big4accountingfirms.com and the Big Four Accounting Firms YouTube channel. Make sure to check out our website and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. So on today's podcast, I wanted to discuss the CPA exam again, and I wanted to explore how hard the CPA exam is. So is it hard to pass a CPA exam? For me, it was pretty hard. At least certain parts of it were pretty hard. I started the test while I was still in college, and I made the mistake of taking the easiest sections first. I'm like, let's just get them out of the way. So I took regulation and BEC while I was in school. And I mean, those weren't bad for me. I did okay on those, but then it came to like audit and financial, and I think I failed both of those the first time. And I think audit, I got like a 74. And then on financial, I failed that one twice, and I got like a 72 and a 73 or something like that. So, I mean, in my opinion, I think the CPA exam is pretty hard. But also, I find just staring at a book all day completely boring. So, I mean, that was another part of it. And as was discussed on that previous podcast about how to better study for the CPA exam, there's better ways to study now than going through Becker and watching Peter Olinto and whoever the other guy is. I forget their names now, but just those things where they make you go through the book and just highlight passages and circle things is just terrible. And if I could go back, I would not have studied the way I studied. I would have just been more diligent and utilized my time a little bit better. But other than that, statistically, the CPA exam is hard to pass because more than 50% of the people fail financial, but every other section is pretty much around 50 to 60%. So, I mean, if you have almost half of the people taking it failing, then yeah, I would say the exam is pretty hard. So how long does it take the average person to pass? According to various people online and even people I know, it takes 6 months to a year. And I mean, this can vary widely depending on when you take it, right? You can take it while you're in school, or you can take it while you're out of school. You can take time off from school and work to focus on it. And that'll really affect the amount of time it takes you to take the exam. But you're also subject to the testing windows. And typically the testing windows are about 2 months long, and then there's a month-long break period, and then it gets back started again. You can only take a section once in each testing window, which means if you fail, you can't take the same test in the same testing window. So what this means is you're kind of restricted on how fast you can take the test if you fail a section. So this is why it takes people typically 6 months to a year, because you have to schedule. Most people take 2 sections in a testing window, and they take another 2 sections in another testing window. And if you space them out, and that'll take you 5 months alone without counting if you started studying before that first testing window. And then if you fail a section and you fail it multiple times, then you're already going to be multiple testing windows there. So you're most likely going to be extending into a year. And why is the CPA exam so hard? And in my personal view, I think the CPA exam is hard because I think the CPA test makers use tricks. I think they make multiple choice questions unbelievably difficult for no reason. They put trick answers in there that are really, really close to the right answer, and it just makes people slip up. And I mean, this is evidence in the passing scores, right? If things were a little bit clearer and easier to understand, 50% of the people wouldn't be failing audit and financial, right? More people would be passing. But also the thing about the multiple choice is they have this in the test, they have, I don't know what you call it, the artificial intelligence and algorithm, whatever. That if you pass the first questions that you get, which are considered medium difficulty, then the next questions you get even harder. So the better you do, the harder it's going to get. And so that's another reason that I think it's a difficult test. But that's not the only thing either, right? There's also task-based simulations where you have to fill information out. And so you don't have a limited amount of things you can choose from. You actually have to come up with it yourself. There's also written communications that you have to do. So it's not a typical multiple choice type of test. It's a lot more hard than that. And financial is obviously the hardest, right? Because there's tons of information. There's 34 topics that you have to study for, and you have to pass it in the same time as the other tests because all the tests are 4 hours long. So it just makes it even harder. And then audit is also like dry material, and it's not intuitive. Financial and audit like are really not intuitive. So it's a little bit harder to study for those. So like how does the CPA exam compare to other tests? To the bar exam, it just depends on where you take the bar exam, but the bar exam pass rate is about 50%, but depending on the state, like New York and California, it can be more difficult and it can be lower than the CPA exam. So the CPA exam isn't like the most difficult test out there, but it is pretty hard. And plus, like most other exams, you don't have to take 4 different versions of it to pass it, right? So it's a lot more cramming on other tests, or it can be more cramming, but the CPA exam is harder, and then there's like a lot more information and it's times 4. Most of these other tests, you're not taking over 16 hours. And then how does it compare to the CFA exam, which is Certified Financial Analyst? That test is a little bit harder as well because that has a 43% pass rate, which is lower than the hardest CPA section, which is financial. So I guess you can be thankful from that perspective. And those of you that like are thinking of going into either being a lawyer or an analyst instead of an accountant just because of the CPA exam, that there you go right there. That maybe that's one reason you can change. And also like a lot of people want to know if the CPA exam is getting harder over time. And I mean, I think people ask that question mainly because they want a reason like to study less or they want a reason why they failed the test. But honestly, like over the past few years, the CPA test has consistently gotten easier. The scoring rates have gone up. For financial, it's been pretty much the same, but for all other sections of the test, it's gone up. And I mean, it's to the point now where BEC's pass rate is almost at 60%. So like it's not that hard, and regulation isn't that far behind with 56%. So the CPA exam is getting easier, and that should just be more motivating to people that are in school right now, because you're going to have a better chance of passing it in the future. And with that, like when is the best time to take the CPA exam? If you look at the quarterly data over the years, there's like always a good testing window, right? And the best testing windows are in Q2 and Q3. And this could be for multiple reasons, right? I don't necessarily think it's always a test, but if you look at the statistics alone, you should be taking your hardest sections, which are probably going to be audit and financial, in the Q2, Q3 window. And if you can, take all of your tests in that time period, right? But I also want to talk a little bit about why Q1 might have such a low pass rate. Now, Q1 might have such a low pass rate for many reasons. It could be just because the test makers are trying the test out and they're trying to see how kids will do. And as kids do worse, they make the test easier so the students can pass it, and they don't have a 40% pass rate and everybody really mad at why they can't pass it. It could also be that a lot of people fail in the first testing window and then they just put their nose down for the following testing windows. And another reason it could be such a bad testing window, Q1, is that there might be people taking this while they're working. And Q1 would be like a really bad time for a lot of people because that's when a lot of audit people are auditing financial statements and working overtime. And you just don't have enough time to study for these tests. So that could be a reason too. I think you kind of have to like look at your schedule and see when you have the most time to study. Testing windows, like you could try to game it, but it's also like, maybe if you failed multiple times and you've taken it in Q1, maybe try Q2 or Q3 and look at which rate is the highest for your part of the exam and take it during that testing window. So is the CPA exam hard? Yes. But can you get it done, and can you get it done efficiently? Yes. And you could also time it out perfectly. You could also time it out perfectly to get it in the right testing window. And you can take time off of work and school. I've seen people lower their workload at school where they take less courses in their final semester. And I've also seen people that worked and they failed multiple times while they were working because they thought they could do it at the same time. And then they just ended up taking time off, like taking a sabbatical or taking extended vacation and just getting it done. Because sometimes that's what it takes, right? Like you just need to 100% focus on it to pass it. You also need to make sure you look at the way you're studying and you're making sure that you're doing the maximum amount of studying that you can, and you're being efficient about it. You're not just passively watching lectures and passively taking notes every now and then and just highlighting. Like highlighting sections isn't really going to do anything for you. You have to practice flashcards, sample multiple choice questions, etc. Like you can't just passively study for this thing. So make sure to leave us a comment on YouTube on this video to let us know whether you think the CPA exam is difficult, what your CPA exam experience was, or what your biggest fears are of the CPA exam. Make sure to check out our website, big4accountingfirms.com. And thanks again for listening.